Okay, I'm speaking with Catherine Wisner, the University of Wyoming Extension horticulturalist, if I can say that right, for Laramie County. Do I have that title right?
You've got it right. Thank you.
Now, Catherine, you're going to talk about why you should actually have a real Christmas tree versus an artificial tree. Is that right?
Yes, I am. And this is kind of an area that's, I think, is important, that a lot of people overlook why you should have a real Christmas tree versus a fake one. And so I'd kind of like to talk about some of the benefits of buying a U.S. grown and harvested Christmas tree. And Christmas trees, they're commercially grown. So there's farmers or ranchers, whatever you want to call them out there, that plant trees specifically to grow for Christmas trees for the holiday season, right?
Okay.
And they're grown in just about all 50 states. And Wyoming is kind of one that it's a little sketchy. I don't think there's commercial Christmas tree people here, but just about in all 50 states. And it represents about 350,000 acres of trees. And so that 350,000 acres of trees are providing an amazing environmental benefit. And you know, trees clean the air, and they give back oxygen, and they sequester carbon. So they pull pollution out of the air, and they store it in their roots. So they're great for the environment. They also offer habitat for birds and other small mammals like squirrels and rabbits and chipmunks and all those little guys. And those, in turn, provide food for animals farther up the food chain. So they provide a lot of wildlife habitat, nesting sites in the spring for birds, and, you know, safe harbor places for small mammals. And so they put back into the environment a lot. And they have a very low carbon footprint, if you want to kind of look at it that way. And so most of them are grown, you know, chemical-free. They're grown with minimal amount of water. And so they're just a real benefit to the environment. And they're also recyclable. And at the end of the holiday season, you can take your tree to the city recycling facility, and they grind it up into mulch, and they incorporate that mulch back into their soil mixtures, and then people use that in their gardens. So it's a full cycle renewable product, which is very cool. I mean, that's kind of where we want to be, right? So fake trees or the artificial Christmas tree, they have been around for a long time. And they actually didn't get started fully until in the 1930s. And the Atis Brush Company created the first artificial Christmas tree that actually looked like a Christmas tree with the needles. And so the Atis Brush Company kind of got it started, and now it's almost 55% of people buy artificial Christmas trees. Well, these artificial Christmas trees are made with a petroleum byproduct, and so they're plastic. And they're made primarily in China. And so all the chemicals have got to be shipped to China. They make the tree gets shipped back to us. So that's a huge carbon footprint right there. And then at the end of the holiday season, you've got to store it. And so you've got to store it someplace in your house, or you've got to rent a facility. So now that artificial tree, even though you reuse it every year, is still costing you money, especially if you have to store it in a rental storage unit. Mm-hmm. So I'm trying seriously to talk people out of buying an artificial tree and to put a real tree in, because I think the environmental benefits just outweigh the convenience of an artificial tree. And one of the biggest complaints that people have about real trees, real Christmas trees, is the needle drop.
Right.
And that just, I know that made my mother crazy. And because she'd go, I'm still finding needles, and it'd be like February. Mm-hmm. And so, but the trick with it is to keep the tree very well hydrated. In other words, you should have that tree in some sort of a little holder that has a well in it, and so you always want to keep that water fresh and full, so that because the tree will continue to take that water up, and that's what keeps those needles hydrated. The other trick is to keep it away from a heat source. So keep it away from, if you've got forced air, keep it away from that forced air vent, the radiators. So you want to keep it away from a heat source if you can. But the real trick with it is to keep it well watered. And my recommendation is to put like a sheet underneath it and put your decorations on top of that sheet, and that way cleanup is a lot easier. I also think vacuum cleaners have improved a lot since my mother had a real tree. But that's the biggest complaint that the Christmas Tree Association gets, is the needle drop on those trees, which, to me that's a minor inconvenience when you look at the benefits that real trees offer to the environment, and the fact that a real Christmas tree is a recyclable commodity and it just goes back into compost, and that helps the soil. So it's a full circle using a real Christmas tree.
Catherine, this is interesting because I think most people who are trying to be environmentally conscious are sort of under the impression that an artificial tree is the environmental friendly way to go. But you're saying that's not true.
That's not true at all. That's more urban myth than it is fact. And so when you think about the carbon footprint that it takes with the petroleum product to make the plastic needles, or even some trees, my grandparents had an aluminum tree, had aluminum needles on it, and my grandma liked it because it was sparkly. And so, but the carbon footprint on those fake trees is huge. When you think about what it takes to ship from China to here, that's big. And then they still have to put it on a truck and ship it to all the distribution areas. So that carbon footprint is pretty big.
Catherine, is it too early to put up a tree now if you keep it hydrated?
This is usually when people start thinking, this time of the year is usually when people start thinking about putting up a Christmas tree and decorating it. It's actually not too early to do it. But again, just make sure that you've got a big enough basin to hold that tree up, and it holds water, and to keep that just well hydrated. Just make sure there's water in there.
So if you do that, it's not a fire hazard then?
It's not a fire hazard, and these trees are fresh cut. They're not, the industry doesn't want to sell something that's a fire hazard, and so they're very careful about that, because they don't want to cause problems. And after Christmas, that's when it should go outside to the curb, and the city picks it up and hauls it away, or you can take it to the facility on Windmill Road, and they'll be happy to take it and grind it up and turn it into mulch.
Catherine, what should you look for when you look for a tree this time of year? What are some red flags and maybe some positive signs?
Well, the one thing you want to look for is that the tree, the branches, the very end of the branches should still be very supple, and so when you bend them a little bit, they should bend easily. You don't want to have something that just breaks and snaps off. And also, if you shake the tree, the needles shouldn't come off. There shouldn't be any browning of the needles, and look inside the tree. The interior needles, they should also still be green. And a lot of times you can just kind of bang the tree a little bit and those dead needles come off, but if you shake the tree, there shouldn't be any dead needles, and the branches should be very supple. So that's what you want to look for.
Now, you mentioned that, of course, these trees are grown on farms. You may have mentioned this. I didn't catch it if you did. Do we have any of those farms here in Wyoming, or are trees imported from Colorado or someplace?
As far as I know, there aren't any Christmas tree farms here in Wyoming. And that's kind of a function of our growing season and our lack of water. But they are grown in almost they're probably coming more from the east area, from Nebraska, Iowa, Missouri, some of those states that get a lot more moisture than we do. So they're still not coming from, it's still kind of, if you look at it from a perspective of it's still the United States and it's a U.S. product, it's still look at it as it's local versus a Christmas tree that's made in China and shipped to us.
Now, when I was a kid growing up in Montana, we used to get a permit to cut down a Christmas tree and go out in the national forest and cut one down. Is that okay?
Yep, you can still call the BLM, Bureau of Land Management, and their phone number is 775-6256, and it's a nominal permit. It's like $10 to go cut your tree down, and that helps the forest too, because now you're kind of thinning the forest a little bit so that there's more water and natural resources for the other trees that are left behind. And so that helps the forest a little, very environmentally friendly thinning. Take the kids, take the family, go up, tromp around, find a tree, bring it home. I mean, that's a very family-friendly event to do.
It's something I always enjoyed as a kid. It was kind of a holiday tradition at my house. Catherine, is there anything else we should tell people on this subject?
Well, I just really feel that it's a lot more environmentally friendly to have a real tree, and if the tree is too big for the house or too tall, you can always cut it back down to something that fits in the room, and then what you trim off you can turn into a wreath or garland decoration in the house, and that pine smell is just so heavenly.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah, you just can't beat that smell.
Now, you mentioned these trees are recyclable. What are they recycled into?
Well, again, if you take them to the City of Cheyenne recycling facility, they grind them up and they incorporate them into their soil, and then they sell that soil that's got the wood mulch in it, the Christmas tree mulch in it, and then you can use that in your gardens, your lawn, your flower beds, your vegetable gardens, and so that decomposes and adds back nutrients to your soil and your plants.
Okay. Anything else on this subject, or does that about cover it?
I think that about covers it. There's just so many more benefits to a real tree than a fake one. Fake trees don't smell good. There's none of that pine smell to them unless you get some pine tree oil and put it on them. But yeah, it's just I think it's a lot more Christmassy to have a real tree.
I actually have always agreed with you, and to be honest with you, because I wasn't real informed on this, I always felt a little bit guilty about that, because I was under the impression, like a lot of folks, that the green thing to do is have an artificial Christmas tree. So I'm glad to learn that getting a real tree is not such a bad idea after all.
It really isn't, and it's a fun thing to do, and smells good, and you're adding a positive impact to the environment.
Okay, I'd like to thank my guest on this segment of Report to Wyoming. We've been speaking with Catherine Wisner, the University of Wyoming Extension horticulturist for Laramie County. Did I get it right this time?
Yes. Yep.
Thanks, Catherine.
All right, thanks. You have a great day.
You too.
Bye.